should be recording. So I'm Jennifer Henius, and I am sitting here with Susie Rokosch. And Susie is a local yogi and a local Tampa Bay yoga instructor. And she teaches with Kodawari, and she also is the regional director for Yoga for Change. And she's also a clinical social worker, and I am too. And I have really been wanting to connect with you, Susie, because I've seen you, seen your social posts, and sort of been following you in the community, and just wanted to get to know you a little bit. And so, really thrilled for this opportunity to kind of connect with you one-on-one.
Yes, thank you. Me too. So thank you for asking.
Can you tell me how'd you get to Tampa Bay?
I came to Tampa Bay through Yoga for Change because of Yoga for Change. I started working with Yoga for Change in Jacksonville. That's our first chapter in our home base. And I came on team there and started teaching in our correctional programming in Duval County. And I really wanted to work full-time in the yoga service sector. I mean, that was why I became a yoga teacher to begin with. I knew that that's the work that I wanted to do. So, I just started asking, for more opportunities. And then lo and behold, down the road, Yoga for Change received a large scale grant from the Florida Blue Foundation to expand out of Jacksonville into South Florida, Tampa Bay, and Orlando. And our director, or our executive director, Catherine Thomas, one day came to me and said, "I have a full-time job for you if you're willing to move." And I was like, "I'm game. Let's do it." So I ended up moving to Tampa.
Wow, well, I wasn't expecting that. Wow. So I guess we should back up then. What can you tell me just a little bit about the mission about Yoga for Change?
Yeah, so we're a nonprofit. Yoga for Change as an organization was founded in 2014. So we're 7 years old, statewide. In Jacksonville is where we started. And our mission is to bring a trauma-informed yoga curriculum, yoga program to four main populations: individuals living with mental health conditions, individuals who are incarcerated, military veterans. We also work some with first responders, as well as youth in general.
Okay, wow. So you've been doing that for a while then.
Yeah, I started teaching with Yoga for Change in 2018. So, I mean, it feels like forever, but yeah, hasn't been all that long. It definitely feels forever in a good way, in a really good way. Like, I feel like I've been doing this work my whole life. Feels good.
Well, I know you've been in the trauma space for a long time because you're a social worker too. Mm-hmm. Can you tell me a little bit about your social work background, where you went to school, and where you might have practiced?
Yeah, I did my master's degree at Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Okay. You're smiling. Are you familiar with Winthrop?
I lived in Columbia for a while.
Okay. Yeah, I loved it. I did a really cool weekend program. I was the second cohort to go through that particular program. It was designed specifically for people who are already working in the field. And so it was a 3-year program, but it allowed you to stay full-time in your job and just do school on the weekends. So when I went into grad school, I was working as a program manager for an adolescent pregnancy prevention, kind of an outreach program in Statesville, North Carolina. And then I kind of had a lot of different jobs throughout the course of my social work career. But then after that, I did my internship during grad school at a psychiatric treatment facility for adolescents that specialized in the treatment of adolescents with sexually compulsive and offensive behavior. And so I worked there and I did my internship there for a few years. And then I ended up working in the substance abuse field. And then after that, kind of transitioned into chronic mental health. And that was the last full-time social work job that I did, was managing a clinical case management department for a community behavioral health center in Jacksonville.
Wow, that's just amazing. That's a ton of clinical experience. Throughout that time, were you a yoga student or a yoga teacher? Had you been practicing at that point?
Yeah, so my yoga journey is kind of like interwoven in there. And it goes back to a car accident I was in when I was 17. I broke my pelvis in 4 places, and my sacrum, and a lot of ribs, and I had a lot of other internal, like I had a brain injury, some internal bleeding, and it was a very, very serious accident. I was very lucky. But anyway, that happened when I was 17, and I recovered initially pretty easily, pretty well. But fast forward like 10 years down the road, I started to have a lot of lower back problems, and just ended up in chronic pain on opiates for about 5 years. And so all of this was starting when I was in grad school. And then kind of the worst of it was when I was working in a substance abuse treatment facility. So it was funny how all of this was lining up for me. I was taking, at that time, tramadol, and I had, had my fusion, and just was really having a hard time getting off of the opiates. But I was working at a treatment center, and so I knew how dangerous they were, and eventually what was going to happen if I didn't get off of them. So I did have to take about 6 months off of work, because when I did come off of them, I was still in a lot of pain. And I really just needed to focus full time on physical therapy, and sort of figuring out how to live with chronic pain. And I found an amazing physical therapist in Jacksonville, and I did the bulk of my work there. And then I sort of plateaued, and all this time I'm, in the social work field, but my physical therapist was the one that really prompted me to do yoga. She was like, you kind of plateaued. I can't really offer you anything else. I really think you should try yoga. And so I was really resistant, because I was like, at that time I couldn't even, my forward fold was like hands on knees. I mean, I had no mobility through my spine. But I was pretty desperate. So I tried it. And then I realized, 6 months later, I was not in pain, or significantly less pain. And then things just continued to improve from there. And as everybody that does yoga will, relate to probably, or understand on some level, I started to get all these other benefits that I wasn't looking for, but that came to me anyway. And that's when I was like, this is how I want to serve people. This is what I want to do. I want to get out of, the case management and talk therapy, and I want to work with people through yoga. So I decided to get my 200 hour, and then I went into my 200 hour with the mission of merging the gap between yoga and mental health. And then when I finished, I connected with Yoga for Change, started teaching for them, and then the rest.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's all sort of interwoven, I guess, if that makes sense.
Did you do your yoga teacher training then in Jacksonville too?
I did it at Big Fish Power Yoga, out of Jax Beach. It's a Baptiste affiliate, or a Baptiste studio. Okay. So Baptiste yoga is my roots. And then obviously, I've learned a lot of trauma informed through both Yoga for Change and Mind Body Solutions up in Minneapolis. Our team has worked extensively with Matthew Sanford, who is just an incredible teacher and human being. So he's been one of my most influential teachers, personally in my own journey, and also in the way I teach students.
That's amazing, because he is sort of one of the pioneers, really, I guess, in accessible yoga, I would say.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Yeah, he's amazing.
Having him as a mentor, I guess, or somebody that you're training with, I guess that must be quite the experience.
Yeah, it was really amazing. I got to train with him on two different occasions. I got to do his level 1, his week-long level 1 training twice.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow, that's great. And so how did you get connected with Kodawari?
How did I get connected with Kodawari? Okay, now I remember.
So I moved studio in Tampa, in case people don't know.
Yeah, when I moved here, I had a lot of help with just connecting the dots and little connections. And so two individuals, her name is Maria De Labrato and Dr. Chris Kalibi, who's one of our board members, and Maria teaches with us. But Maria's a lawyer in her full-time job. But they had been to a training with Catherine Thomas, our executive director, like years before. And so when I was getting ready to move, Catherine connected me with Dr. Kalibi, who then invited several people in the yoga service sector over to his house for a dinner, just to help me kind of meet some people who were already in the field, because I needed to build a team from scratch. Like I had to find teachers. So I connected with Maria and Dr. K at like through that. And then Maria also teaches at Kodawari. So then Maria connected me to Annette Scott, who's the owner and founder of Kodawari. And I mean, Annette is just one of the most like amazing human beings I know. The very first day I met her, she gave me 40 mats for Yoga for Change. She was like, I have these mats. Do you want them for Yoga for Change?
Oh, wow.
Yes, please. So from day one, Annette has been like a huge advocate and supporter of me personally and the work that I do with Yoga for Change.
Oh, that's so awesome, because I know that they have allowed you to, I guess to have studio space there, because you have Yoga for Change classes right online and in person. At least you were at some point at her studio.
Well, that's actually at Bella Prana. So I also work, I have really great studio support here, again, personally and through Yoga for Change. So Yoga for Change has a community class at Bella Prana once a week, every Friday. And we've been doing that for, I mean, since the very beginning. So that's been going on for a long time too. So I do also work closely with Bella Prana in that way. So I'm very lucky. I have a lot of support.
How have you seen the Tampa yoga community change through COVID?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I mean, initially, I think everyone was just trying to put out content to give people access to yoga, because I mean, everything was shut down. And so it was just about, it felt like the whole community was really rallying around like the student base and just doing anything and everything, that we could to create yoga that was accessible to the public, because the studios were closed. And so, initially that looked like live stream classes on Facebook and Instagram. And then, as things started to slowly settle in, a lot of studios have created like their own virtual studios and virtual platforms. And a lot of stuff has shifted to virtual, although there's a lot going on in the Tampa community in person as well. There's a lot more outdoor classes than there used to be, I mean, so I think and studios are doing, I mean, at least all the studios that I've been in, which I think every studio is doing everything they can to ensure safety around cleaning like the rooms and all the equipment and the supplies before and after every class, and ensuring that like floors are taped so that there's adequate space in between people. So I mean, the yoga community has definitely shifted, but I think everybody has rallied around each other and just trying to keep the community alive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know that's what I've been trying to provide, what little support I can too, right, through Tampa Bay Namaste and all my little venues. Really, it was just around trying to be supportive to my friends in the business, because unfortunately, I've seen a lot of studios close down, right, on a permanent basis, because not everybody was able to pivot online, and it's been hard for people,
It has. It has been hard. And I know, I know for us it was hard. We had to pivot all of our classes with Yoga for Change to virtual. And I taught virtually, at both Bella Prana and Kodawari during quarantine. So it's been hard for everyone, I think. But I've been really impressed with how well the community has rallied around like the situation and trying to make the best out of it. And I think there's been, there has been some really cool silver linings in all of this. I know for our organization and our team, as a statewide team, we are all a lot closer than we used to be before COVID, because everything switched to virtual, and our teams sort of like intermingled, where we have Jacksonville teachers teaching Tampa classes online and vice versa. And like there's been a big cross. And I think even within the studio culture, the online platform is now a norm. And I think that that will exist even when, 10 years down the road, when we look back at this time and we're like, do you remember COVID? Like, I think there will be elements of virtual yoga that will still exist. Like, I don't see that going away. I just see, more stuff shifting back to in-person safely as vaccines become more available, and everybody gets them. But I don't think the virtual component will disappear.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it's probably here to stay. And I like it, but I miss being with everybody. But it's also introduced me to different teachers. I first saw Annette online, I think on her Facebook page, where she's doing like a meditation in the morning. And so I've kind of gotten to know her through that,
Yes, yes, her meditations are so good.
Yeah. So that's been great. Well, so I know that you're been working on a trauma-informed training, right? And I guess I want to back up and sort of ask, what does trauma-informed mean? What's it mean to you?
That's a great question. When I think about trauma-informed yoga, I think about, a couple things, not in any particular order, but I think about getting students out of their heads and into their bodies. Because I know for me, when I came into yoga, I was very much living in a place disconnected from my body. And so figuring out and getting to return safely into my body and just learn how to be present in my body was life-changing for me. And I know a lot of the students we work with, especially in the recovery field, are living with chronic pain. I mean, there's a lot of chronic pain in recovery. And so I think that's first and foremost, is just helping students get out of their heads and into their bodies. Other key elements of trauma-informed yoga, or what sets that apart from like a typical studio yoga class, is there's a lot more choice involved, and not only different options to take throughout the practice, but also freedom to come and go from the practice, in and of itself. And I know trauma-informed yoga classes, there's a lot more talking than there is in a studio setting. And so the culture and the environment is just very different. But I think that, that focus on getting back into the body and just learning how to be present in your body in the moment. I mean, to me, like, that's what trauma-informed yoga it can do.
Mm-hmm. And so you're doing, is this a teacher training that you have coming up, or is this for anyone who wants to know about trauma-informed? Tell me a little bit.
It's for anybody. Teachers will obviously receive Yoga Alliance CEUs. So in some ways it's for yoga teachers, but we also obtained approval from CE Broker to offer 8.5. So not the whole training, counts as clinical hours, but 8.5 clinical hours for LCSWs and LMHCs, which I'm so excited about, because I think there's a lot of really cool ways to integrate breath and movement into the therapeutic process. Yeah. And I think that even if you're not a yoga teacher, if you're working with clients, who've been impacted by trauma, and like, who hasn't been impacted by trauma in some way, that there are some really cool things that I believe, you can learn and bring into your like therapeutic and treatment setting, even if you're not a yoga teacher.
Mm-hmm. And is that happening in person?
It is. It's happening in person at Kodawari. And so it's kind of a Friday night, Saturday and Sunday afternoon. Friday, March 19th from 6 to 9, and then Saturday and Sunday from 1 to 6. It is in person, and we do have a cap on it for space, to ensure that we can maintain social distancing, and keep it COVID safe. But it is in person. We really wanted to do it in person if it was possible. And we feel that with all the precautions that are already in place at the studio, and with maintaining social distancing while we're, there and present together, that it would be possible.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's pretty amazing. I mean, I'm sure it's quite the process to get both accreditation from Yoga Council, Yoga Alliance, plus going through the state of Florida, or whatever you need to do, I guess, to be accredited through that training. That and alone, right, as I'm sure was a rigorous process to go through.
I learned a lot. It was a fun process. I mean, I learned a lot through the process. But it was a dream of mine when Annette came to me and said, I really want to do a trauma-informed yoga training at the studio. Are you willing to be a part of this? And so I was like, absolutely. And as we started creating it together, I was like, we gotta get this approved for social workers and counselors, because there's a lot of value in bringing this, to the clinical sector. And I just, it was really important for me to do that. So I was really excited that it was.
You met with other social workers who are also yoga teachers or studio owners in your circle or not so much?
Not so much. I know a couple of social workers and counselors who are also yoga teachers on our Yoga for Change team throughout the state. So, we've got people in Jacksonville, South Florida, Tampa, and Orlando. And throughout our team statewide, there are a couple social workers and counselors on our team. And I do know some other yoga teachers who are involved in like social service field and, in some way. Yeah. But, I also know yoga teachers who, do insurance sales or, whatever on the side. So I think the professions of yoga teachers is pretty diverse.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know for me, it's been fascinating just to sort of meet and network with social workers in particular, because I think there is such an interest to sort of bridge that mental health and the physical somatics piece of, of moving your body, and people are really interested in trying to figure out how to bring that into their practice, both with individuals and groups and the larger community. And I haven't never been in a private practice situation, and I'm a relatively new yoga teacher. So all of this is sort of new to me. So I've been really trying to sort of network and connect and try to find a forum for other social workers like me who are sort of interested in sort of connecting in that space and just learning from each other. And so I think it's really great that you took the extra effort to go through the process to have a something credentialed so that people could get CEUs for their training. I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, thank you. I was really excited about it. Like, so it felt very important to me to do that. And so you'll appreciate this, but when I was like getting ready to hit the submit button for like to CE broker, and it was like, once you hit submit, you can't go back. Then it was like, it was just like this moment where I was like, oh my God, like, is this actually going to go through? Like I wasn't sure. And I don't know why I wasn't sure, but, I was like, oh, I just really hope this goes through. And then when the approval came back, it felt like such a huge accomplishment just to get the approval.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, no doubt, for sure. So you've clearly went on in your training. So you've done more beyond the 200 hours and.
Yeah, I actually did my 300 hour at Bella Prana just this past year. I started it in July of 2019, I believe. July of 2019, right when I moved to Tampa. I was, again, we have a Yoga for Change class there, and so I was very aware of what was going on in the studio, and they had a training starting that July, and I was like, I'm just going to do it because I knew that I wanted to do my 300 hour, and it felt like, the perfect timing and opportunity to do it. And so I got to complete that with Bella Prana, and we were able to keep going throughout the pandemic. We, just like everybody else, we had to shift from meeting in person to virtual. And those first couple of weekends virtually, it was a big shift and adjustment, for everybody, but we made it work. And then I just finished my 300 hour in December of this past year.
Wow, that's awesome. Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you.
You were actually wrapping that up and doing your teacher training also through COVID, I guess. Yeah. So that whole thing had to pivot to online too, I would guess.
Yeah. It's been a busy year.
Yeah. And Bella Prana is one of those, it's like a big brick and mortar studio that's been in the Tampa Bay area for a long time. They're like a really well established group. Like to watch them too.
Yeah. I mean, everybody did just, it was like instantly, an instant pivot. Everybody figured it out and made it work. And I was really grateful that we were able to keep going with our training, because we had a training like early in March and then one early in April. And I remember mid-March being like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And then, we got an email that was like, we're going to keep going. This is our plan. And it was just like, okay, we'll figure it out. And we did.
Yeah. And so do you have any other trainings coming up right now, or is that just the one the trauma informed training happening?
That's the Kodawari is in the middle of a 300-hour, and they just started, and I got to be a part of their very first weekend together, which was really just an incredible experience. And so I got to be a part of that weekend. So that's going on. But as far as like open to the public, that the one coming up is the only one. We're planning to do it again in August. We already have a date, I believe, that on the calendar. So this is something we're planning to do a couple times a year, like going into the future. And at some point we would like to have a virtual component. But we're still in the development phase.
Yeah, and as long as you can do this safely, and we know that you can, and we know that they are definitely been working leaps and bounds to try to keep the studio clean and safe for everyone, and limiting the size of participants and everything, which is awesome. I hope you guys have a really fantastic training. Are there other places where people can find you? Like, can people connect with you or learn more about either Yoga for Change or the things you might be up to?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not the best on social media. But I mean, I am on social media. And I teach at Kodawari on Thursdays at 10:45, and I also teach at Bella Prana on Tuesdays at 4:15. So that's like my ability to be in the studio culture and world, which I love. I love being a part of the studio, and I love that work. And
are
then
you
of
teaching Baptiste? Are you teaching Baptiste style classes, or what kinds of classes?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I'm a Baptiste trained teacher, but the only Baptiste affiliates in this area are All Y'all and Sun State, which, by the way, both of those studios are awesome. So if you haven't checked those out, you should too. Those are great. The All Y'all just opened here in the, I'm kind of in the Seminole Heights area. And so All Y'all is like right here. And then Sun State's across the bridge for me in St. Pete. But those studios are also just really, really, really great. So I don't teach Baptiste because I don't teach at a Baptiste studio, but I mean, I am a Baptiste teacher, like that's my roots. So that comes through, like I can't not teach that way. But it is not like a Baptiste class per se.
Okay. Well, can you just maybe describe what a Baptiste class is, or what that philosophy is, or that experience for people who maybe don't know?
Yeah, so the Baptiste sequence, if you will, is called Journey into Power. And so all Baptiste classes are essentially created around this blueprint of the Journey into Power sequence. So they might not be exactly the same. So it's not like the Ashtanga series or Bikram per se, where you're doing the exact same poses like every single class. But it follows this blueprint, if you will, of the flow and the like arc and the structure of the class. So all Baptiste classes are the same in that way. And then there are, certain principles within the Baptiste methodology that you will hear, cueing wise and language wise that are very Baptiste. And so you'll hear those certain phrases and ways of cueing and speaking that are kind of unique to the Baptiste culture, if you will. Yeah.
So when you're teaching for Bella Prana and Kodawari, what sorts of classes do you teach for them?
A hot power. So right, hot power vinyasa. And then I sub other classes whenever I can, and there's an opportunity or availability. And I always enjoy that. Recently I got to sub a restorative class, and that was great, and I loved it. But primarily I teach more powerful classes.
Okay, well, that's great too. And I know there's a mix of classes that you're offering through Yoga for Change, right? And that you can pretty much get online and take classes there too.
Yeah, well, so Yoga for Change is interesting because all of our classes as an organization, or the bulk of our classes as an organization, are inside of different facilities. So they're not open to the public, like inside of treatment centers or correctional facilities or schools. Obviously, no schools right now, but prior to COVID, we did do a lot of teaching in schools. So our general like program, or we call them facility or program classes, are not open to the public. But as a result of COVID, one of the things that we did to again be a part of the yoga community, trying to make yoga accessible to like everyone in the public during this pandemic, when all the yoga classes were, kind of taken away. We created a YouTube channel, and we have a ton of free Yoga for Change classes on our YouTube channel, which is great. And even though the pandemic to some degree has lifted, although we are still very much in it, but studios are open and yoga is a little bit more accessible, we still felt it was really important to keep putting that content out there because it is trauma informed. And so we wanted to make trauma informed yoga more accessible to the community. And so that's something that we've been really passionate about and trying to maintain, is just like constantly putting out content that's free. It's also a great resource for our students. When our students leave the treatment center or the, correctional facility or wherever they are, that we find them, or like not find them, but that we get to connect with them. Often they'll ask like, where can we find yoga when we leave? And yoga is expensive. I mean, yoga is not super accessible financially, especially if you're just coming out of jail or if you're just getting out of treatment and trying to get on your feet again. And so we've created an alumni program recently during COVID that we're trying to utilize as a way to get resources to our former students. But a big part of that is our YouTube channel. And so we can direct our alumni as well as anybody from the community to take classes there too.
Okay, well, that's great to know too.
Yeah, check out our YouTube channel. It's great. There's stuff for all ages. There's meditations, there's chair practices, there's mat practices, like there's yin, restorative, power. There's a whole gamut of styles, types of yoga, and also times. You can find like a 10-minute class or an hour class, or so there's a huge range of what you can find. And it's cool because most of the classes are from our team throughout the state. So there's, and our team is very diverse. Like I'm Baptiste, but we have, people that come from a yin background, or that come from a restorative background, or that come from a kundalini background. So we have all these diverse backgrounds of teachers like coming together on one team, which is also really cool.
It is really cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing and spending some time with me and just kind of sharing a little bit about your journey and your experience.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. And thank you for the opportunity to connect.
Yeah. Namaste.
Namaste.